Good morning, this is Sue Muller from the Pharmaceutical Locum Company, and today we have the pleasure of Peter Harris, who's from the pharmacy industry and spends some of his time interviewing candidates from pharmacists to shop assistants. From your experience, Peter, are most pharmacists good at interviews?
Unfortunately not, Sue. Just recently I've interviewed quite a lot, and I have to say that their interviewing was poor, whether it's because they haven't been interviewed a lot, or poor preparation, nerves, but unfortunately do not interview well in my experience.
And what are the key areas that candidates need to improve on in an interview, from your opinion?
Firstly, information. They've applied for a job that they've read at least a very broad-based description. Have they found out more about us as a business? There's a big network out there that they can use, whether it's friends, colleagues, or the internet, so they come pre-armed with knowledge about the business. They need to, I think, take a deep breath before they walk in. They've got to, if they've been through interviews before, remember the questions perhaps, and know how to answer. That sort of preparation is very important beyond even their own personal presentation. They've looked in the mirror before they come to the interview.
And what did you think of the standard of the resumes that were handed to you, and what do you look for in a resume?
It's a good question, because you advertise for one position, you might get 50 resumes. You look at those resumes, and depending on their quality, that's the first selection criteria, is the resume. Is it too short? Is it too long? Is it too arty? Does it get to the facts? Is the timelines of previous job history or even education got gaps in it? Those gaps should be filled. So people, if they don't have a good resume to begin with, they may not even have a face-to-face interview. So they've got to get that right first.
Okay, that was my next question that you've answered. Thank you. And do you think candidates should pre-prepare certain questions, and what sort of questions, for example, do you like to ask?
We ask a lot of questions. We have a predetermined list, of course, as most good interviewers would do, and depending on the answers you may jump some questions. But I like to ask questions and get the answer to that exact question. The candidates may have an assumption in their mind of what they'll be asked, so to think about that's very important as well in their preparation, and they've been through other interviews recently. I'm sure the questions will be similar, so if they can remember that, that may give them some advantage within the interview. But to be pre-planned is very important. It shows that they're actually thinking about what they're doing.
And how do you think a candidate should present for an interview, and what would you notice first?
Good question, because cliched, the first impression is important. I like them to be about 15 minutes before their interview time, not earlier than that, and hopefully not any later, so they can relax. It's the first impression when they walk in. Are they looking me in the eye? Is the handshake firm? Is their hair clean? Is their tie straight? Are they well dressed? And I even actually look even if their shoes are clean. Because if they come to see me for an interview and they can't have a good pair of clean shoes on, what other personal standards could be well lacking?
And what sort of key criteria do you look for during that interview?
I'm looking for them to listen to the question. I'm looking at them to answer clearly what the question is. I want them to look me in the eye. If they need the question repeated, I'm okay for them to ask, can you please repeat the question? I don't want them to take too long to answer that question, because maybe they think they're going to give me an answer I want to hear, rather than simply the answer that I want them to give me.
And when they walk out of that door after the interview, what makes you remember them?
It is the first impression. Have they looked me in the eye? Has their handshake been firm? Have they answered my questions? If they go through all the things that we've just spoken about, they're a long way going towards at least the second interview from there. But first impression is absolutely important to the interview process.
Peter Harris, thank you very much.
Thank you, Susan.